We've got Alfred Aboya, one of my favorite UCLA basketball players, part of 3 Final Fours, a centerpiece to Bruin basketball history. You can follow him on Twitter at ALBoya12. That is ALBoya12. I'm on Twitter at Brian Fenley, and I wanted to bring on Alfred because he is such a unifying presence, and he is a role model for myself and many in the community, a guy who coaches currently in the G League and is always fighting for equality and racial equality. And sports can be such a unifier, and we hope that that can be a medicine for us, sports, as we get through these trying times in our country. And Alfred, first of all, I know it's on a more solemn note, but I wanted to welcome you in, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Always a pleasure for me to be here.
So, Alfred, we're all reacting to the horrific death of African American George Floyd by the hands of the Minneapolis police. And as you watched that video, what thoughts were permeating through your mind?
To start with, use the operative word here. It's you just mentioned it. We reacting. Yeah. So there's always situation always happen, and the way you react will dictate how it goes.
Sure.
And because of the situation we're in right now, I think it's always better to be proactive instead of reacting. We have to act, and then and in order to act, we need to understand what the problem is, and to understand what the problem is, the party involved have to sit down and talk and have a conversation about what the problem is or what the other side feels. Once that is established, I think is the first step towards a mutual understanding, and start building on whether it be policy or whatever it is, to put in place a fair laws, rules, and regulation that will benefit everybody, because we all are a citizen of the same country, so we should be working towards the same goal and same objectives.
As the that becomes apparent, we get laws and we make changes in politics because of all that is happening currently. Across the country, across the world, demonstrations all over the place, people retaliating, wanting change. What is your stance on the protests, the demonstrations? And some have been peaceful, some have been violent. How are you handling that and seeing how the country and the nation and the world is dealing with all this?
First of all, it's a crisis, and one thing you cannot do with crisis is learn from it. You can't waste a crisis. It's important that when a crisis happens, you study it, understand what made it happen,
Yeah.
and then that will help you understand it and prevent it from happening again. Um, I understand it's a constitutional right for people to, express how they feel, freedom of expression. And I think most of the people are trying to do that. They're trying to, push for change by protesting. But again, there's always bad people out there.
Yeah.
There's always bad apples who are taking advantage of the situation, and start looting and doing other bad
Yeah.
things that are not necessary. Uh, but I think, everybody has to be a part of the solution. And how are you part of the solution if you're going to protest and loot and break stores and do other things that cripple the economy or
Yeah.
hurt other American who are trying to do the right thing. So um, for me, I think that it's important to educate ourselves, and understanding what the problem is, and take steps forward. That's the only way we will take we'll make significant changes. So
One who had made a lot of changes in our society in the past, Martin Luther King. And, if he were alive today, Alfred, what do you think he would be thinking about what's going on right now?
I don't know what you would think, but I know one thing though. The United States have made some big stride, huge strides, from the 50s, even from slavery to the 50s until now. I think a lot more minority have enjoyed the fruit of this country. It's not, we're not there yet. We
Yeah.
still have a long way to go, but definitely some huge strides have been made from the 60s to now. But we can't be satisfied, like in sports, like you can never be satisfied. You always have to strive to be the best. So how can we strive to be the best people? It's by not being satisfied for the progress that we made and seek to better where we are now, and get to better places. I think you'll be happy for the progress that been made, but also hungry to keep making changes so that the word equality, has the perfect. I mean, that
Sure.
words become. Um, I'm looking for the word like we live that word. We live
Totally.
equality, because I think it's just a word that is written in the Constitution, but I don't think every American like enjoy that equality, whether it be economically, socially, you name it. There's still some inequalities there that needs to be addressed.
How close can we get to that equality if everything that we learned from these experiences that are going on in this country right now, we can use that as progress? How much closer do you feel we can get to calling it equality by the textbook definition based upon the momentum and movements that are taking place right now?
That's an interesting question. Like I mentioned earlier, uh, for the collective to get to that point, individual individuals have to
Yeah,
make the change first.
sure.
So I think the question that every individual has to ask themselves is that what am I doing to be a solution? What am I doing to push for that change? It starts with the love. I mean, and if you love yourself, you can only love your neighbor and expect that same love in return.
Yeah.
So understanding who we are as a person and wanting to make that change personally, I think is where the change starts. You can't do to other people what you don't want to be done to you.
That's a good
So,
point.
uh, how do you learn to love yourself and being able to transfer that love to your neighbor, to your brother, to your sister? I think that's where everything should start.
I love it. The self-reflection leading to tolerance within yourself, which leads to tolerance to everybody. How have you been, Alfred, a victim of racial injustice in ways in which that it's affected your own life personally?
Mine have different experiences.
Yeah.
I can my experience can be compared to an African American who was born and grew up here. I mean, every
Yeah.
individual experiences is different to begin with, but for me, coming from a different continent, from a different country, and I didn't grow up being pulled over, being uh, constantly harassed. And when I moved to the U.S. and the first time I got pulled over, and I remember like nothing. It wasn't for me. It didn't scare me. I got pulled over. The cop was, we had a conversation, and all he told me is that, hey, when make sure you slow down because I was, speeding. And the next time I got pulled over, the cop, asked me, hey, you gotta ask your passenger because I have, two people in the back and one people next to me. He asked me to ask my passenger to buckle up, because a week prior, there was an accident and then people died. So my interaction with cops, that's all I know. It was a
Yeah.
peaceful interaction. They're doing their job, and you know. But when I went back to school, to high school, to get my master,
Hmm.
to graduate school down south in Mississippi, you know, that interaction was different. I got pulled over there a couple of times too, and and if I was an angry person, I think that interaction could have escalated and be, you know,
Sure.
something else, because uh, the question that the cop was trying to get at, like, yeah, who are you? What do you do? Do you have guns in the, I never, you have guns in your car? Like, you know, who caused this? Who caused, who's
Yeah.
who's the owner of the cars? Questions like that, where he could just ask for my driver license and go to his car and can have all those informations. Uh, so, and imagine, people being exposed to that constantly growing up. Like you can only, you know, like show resentment towards,
Sure.
towards police officers, but again, that is not an excuse. I think it's important that, uh, people communicate, but in order to communicate, people have to be open for that dialogue. And to be open for a dialogue, you need to, understand like facts and understand history and understand, uh, understand the gravity of the situation. Then and be open-minded. That's a key word right there. Be open-minded, and that will only better the relationship. Cops, citizen,
Yeah.
vice versa. So my experience is different, not being from this country, but I can, I get both sides. Being a police officer is not an easy job.
Yeah.
It's not an easy, and every time you pull somebody over, you don't know what they have, what they do.
Sure.
It's a stressful situation. So, and I never, my interaction wasn't, always that. So I always had a, good interaction with cops. So I don't, but I'm not a, I can't speak for somebody who, had those, you know, tough or hard
Right.
interaction with the cops, and that built it over time, resentment uh, towards authority. So, but personally for myself, I think it has always been, if you take out a couple times that I got pulled over, down south, it was always a good interaction. So.
Yeah. Because you were born in Africa, did you experience different forms of discrimination when you came to the United States than those that were born in this country?
Again, it's just it's a different perspective.
Yeah.
First of all, like in Cameroon, we all blacks to begin with. So for me, when I moved, so when I first came to the U.S., I went to school in New Hampshire, Tilton School, and it was a predominantly white school. It was only 4 black students on the whole campus. For me, that was new. It was unsettling going to a restaurant, going to a place, and you can feel like every eyes are on you. You know, so those type of feelings, I never experienced that before. You know, but luckily for me, the people that were around, the people I was around there, I was around there. I'm talking about Mrs. Alfred and her family. They were really welcoming the whole, Tilton community. So I didn't feel any different.
Yeah.
Like I was, I enjoy being there. I enjoy, although I was, my skin looked different, but I think our heart was the same. I think that, uh, was an experience that I would love to relive, and I hope every American had to live those type of,
Yeah.
love, no matter what you look like or where you come from. Uh, you know, so my experience is a bit different.
Your experience is such a teaching tool for so many others. And so, how do you feel like what you've experienced in your life, the clout, the position you are as a basketball coach and as a player, and your stance in pro basketball, how you can use all of this to play a proactive part in seeing change come through? Like, what can you do personally with all of your interactions dealing with pro athletes?
It's definitely a unique platform. People are placed in different, uh, you know, area or different realm to and they have to be able to take advantage of where they were put or the platform they were given. Playing basketball was a privilege. Coaching is a privilege. So how can you take advantage of the platform that you have and push for positive change? For me, with my role with the Iowa Wolves, team player development director, one of my duties or responsibilities is to connect players in the community. You know, make them understand that they're part of the community, and the community looks up to them. Not only to support them, but also sometimes when things are hard, you just turn to sports.
Yeah.
It's kind of an escape room where when you at the game or in front of your TV, you forget about anything else. You just enjoy the moment. So for me, create a relationship, build those relationships, and I think for me that's that's how I push for the change. I personally just create those relationships, build those relationships, and make those relationships grow. Just people to understand that we all are the same.
Yeah.
We all are the same. We were put in this world to be free and to live our dreams.
Alfred, sports is, such a leveler, like you said, and it can be so healing for people to take their minds off what is going on and forget about the strife that is going on in one's country. And look, I love the comments that T-Wolves head coach Ryan Saunders made, and I know you retweeted this. You're a
Mhm.
coach with the Timberwolves organization, their G League team, the Iowa Wolves, and the T-Wolves head coach. And Coach Saunders went on ESPN, and I'm going to read this quote. He said, quote, "As a white male, I need to be a listener at a time like this first and foremost, because I don't understand in a lot of ways what others, in particular black males, have had to endure on a daily basis. So I need to learn. We need to learn," end quote. This goes, Alfred, right to your point about education and teaching. What do you make of his comments?
Right on point. He hit it right on right on. That's right on point. His comments are exactly what I've been saying. Education and understanding. You can never trade places and understand. Since we can't trade places, then we cannot understand what other people go through. That's why he mentioned we got to be a listener first. Be open minded when you listen to other people's grievances, then you will understand what type of stress they go through on a daily basis. um, he hit it right on the head. You hit it right on the head. Education is definitely the operative word here. But then, how do you, um, instead of reacting, we have to be proactive. Instead of us waiting for things to happen then react, how can we be proactive? And make stride, uh, positive stride, without having to wait for a casualty
Yes.
and react to that. That's the question that everybody should ask themselves. How can I personally, what can I do to, you know, proactively, what can I proactively do to stop incident like that from happening? How can I educate, my coworker, my neighbors about, things that I go through on a daily basis, so they can understand, and we can all support each other and make and together push for positive changes. So, I think he hit it right in the head. Educate and understand what the other side is feeling or have endured, to be able to together make positive changes.
Alfred Aboya joins us, former UCLA basketball player. I'm Brian Fenley. What do you think, Alfred, when you heard the story about NBA player Jaylen Brown, who drove 15 hours to where he's from in Georgia to lead a protest in Atlanta? What does that say about him and what he's trying to accomplish?
Well, athletes are role models. A lot of people are looking up to them. So that just shows the type of person, the type of man he is. You know, uh, using the platform that he has, his notoriety, his stardom, just to make people feel that they're in this together. You know, uh, that I'm here with you. I'm gonna walk with you. Uh, that just it just boosts people morale.
Yeah.
Knowing that for somebody to know that I'm not in this by myself. I have a star. I have an NBA athlete who's uh, who wants to be who wants to make a difference.
Yeah.
I think I salute what he did. I think uh, everybody should join in and do the same. I was watching the news yesterday and I saw the sheriff in Michigan, did the same thing. Like he led a march, or people asked him to walk with us, you know, and just showing for other people, being there for other people. It's important, and what Jalen Brown did is something to be saluted.
It's nice to see. I think I saw the NBA in all of its 30 markets are going to do more in terms of protocol and foundation work to bring about that education for racial equality.
Mhm.
And like you said, this is like one of the many things that I think good will come out of this. And it's horrible that it takes something like this tragedy to create the reaction to this, because like you said, rather than react, we should be proactive. But in this case, how do you think pro basketball can be best suited to being the the gold standard for racial equality moving forward?
I mean, it's tough because this is not the first time that we facing this situation. I remember SPs a couple years ago where LeBron and Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, they stood up and spoke about uh, police brutality and all. And a couple years later, here we are again.
Yeah.
Somebody being killed in the hands of the police. Uh, you know, there is a, a systemic, racism, institutionalized racism, uh, and it is important that people recognize it first, because you might not think that you're doing something wrong because you grew up accustomed to. I mean, police has a protocol, yeah, and there are things that they do uh, that sometimes might not be, because I don't think when looking back at that officer with George Floyd, he was nonchalant, casually just putting his hands in his pocket.
Yeah.
I don't know if he realized that he was hurting somebody,
Mhm.
So how, I mean, if you get in his mind, what was he thinking at that time? And also understanding that not all cops are bad, not all protesters are bad, you know, but they're always bad apple trying to take
Yes.
advantage of the situation.
Mhm.
I think, legally, uh, people have to be able to, affect change by voting, right?
Yes.
Affect change by, the state, the state representative or people who represent their citizens and their people. They have to be able to put in place sound policies
Mhm.
that keeps everybody accountable. Your police officer, took an oath to protect, citizens, not to kill them. You are a citizen. You have to respect the law and you have to respect the officer. How do everybody has a part to play in this. So how can, everybody plays, I mean, how can I play my part? That's the question that everybody should ask themselves. And I think it's by, you know, it's that way, it's only like asking those kind of questions that will be able to to come up with positive actions and positive laws and rules and regulations and make the change.
Well, that plays right into my last question, Alfred, because I wanted to ask you, where do you see hope out of all this? And that we won't have to go back to something like this again to then go and try to create more change. Why are you hopeful that this is a situation in our country that will be a teaching tool and that we'll never have to go down that road, hopefully, because we have made the said changes, revamping, implementations for a more prosperous future for everyone?
We cannot lose hope. We have this, this saying, African saying that, there's nothing that you cannot do without hope, you know. So we have to hope that, and I'm hopeful, because I think and I believe that people are good first, and they get corrupted by the environment,
Yeah.
you know. So how can we, you know, make that environment more conducive for people goodness? Because that environment polluted people's heart and polluted people's way of thinking and way of acting. So how can we better that environment? How can we, uh, put laws that will be conducive of creating that type of environment? I think that's a question that politicians should ask themselves. Like, what set of rules that we can put in place that will ensure that everybody in front of the law will be equal? It's start by creating an environment that will be conducive of that. And we can only be hopeful because the people will put in charge, people will put in, uh, and in the administration, they took an oath to serve us.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to do their job, and us with them. We have to do our, everybody has to play their part, whatever that part is.
The policy changers are going to have to wake up now. This is the ultimate wake up call for them to make changes. And the movement is out there. Like you said, there's some really good people on the front lines trying to see this through and make change that stays. And we are not in those situations like a couple years ago when you had, like you said, LeBron talking about stuff, and here we are again. We can finally get to a point and where we don't have to go back. And like you said, Alfred, there has been progress, but there's still progress to be done, obviously, based upon what we're seeing right now. And hopefully, this, as hard as it is for our country and all of the angst and all of the frustration, like you said, hopefully there's a little glimmer of positivity that can eventually come out of this, that we can become a better nation because of it and grow and learn and become more inclusive and more together and united as a nation. And I respect so much, Alfred, what you do and all the people that you affect and that you can come in contact with as a teacher, as a role model, as a coach, because I know that you are such a big part of being on the front lines and helping see people uh, get into that unified mindset and just acceptance and equality. Thank you for everything you've done, Alfred, and continue to do, and really appreciate you reacting and sharing your thoughts on everything with us here on the podcast.
Always, always. It's my pleasure, man. Whenever I have a second, whenever help is needed, I don't know how much help that is. I'll always be there, whether it be, just talking, answering questions, sharing my thoughts. Um, I think it's important that, people hear positive messages. And that will only, I think this country is full of resilient people.
Yeah.
This country been to a lot. And at the end of the day, still come out on top.
Yeah.
And I think this race relationship won't be any different. At the end of the day, uh, a new America will emerge, and will live in a more equal and respectful, America. And everybody should be hopeful that it's the path that we're on. And we can't waste the crisis, and I don't think
Yeah.
this crisis will be wasted. There are people out there working to make sure that this crisis is not wasted and that we come out of it more understanding, more, you know, more, with more love, because that's what is needed. Because love heals. That is needed to heal and keep moving forward. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, and I think we could all use a hug right now based upon what our country has gone through the last couple of months. Alfred,
Definitely.
thank you so much.
Thank you.